Good evening. My name's Tom Mariome. I'm chairman of the Public Works Committee, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, January 6th, 2015. We're in the first floor conference room at City Hall in Wisconsin Rapids. As we get into this, everybody can introduce themselves so people watching this will know who everybody is.
I'm Scott Kellogg, District 3 Alderman.
Nick Dooms, design engineer.
Joe Eichstead, interim city engineer.
Andrew Kirkpatrick, District 5.
Karen Madden, Daily Tribune.
Chad Worrell, District 1. Todd Furphy, District 2.
Cynthia Hank.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to item 2, and that's to review the draft policy governing riverbank maintenance.
Could I suggest we do this last? Because I have some changes that might take some time to discuss. And therefore we go through the ones that probably be faster and then have that last. It doesn't matter to me, but
Anybody have any objections?
okay.
Okay, with that, we'll go to item 3. That's requested permission to bid the following contracts on an annual basis. A, curb and gutter and sidewalk maintenance. B, asphalt paving. And C, concrete pavement patching.
So these are our annual contracts that we do every year. The difference this year is that we're requesting that we get permission to bid those every year going forward. You know, rather than bring it back for permission or their contracts that we always do. So.
Oh, not bringing it back before the committee, just doing it.
Right.
Okay.
To do it.
You have to bid it out anyway. So.
Right.
Makes
Oh,
sense to me. I'll
yeah.
make a motion.
I'll second that. Any discussion by anybody?
We want these on oops. We'll go ahead.
Yeah. Oh,
Do you always take the low bidder?
Yeah, we do. By state law.
Oh, isn't there a certain amount, anything under like 25,000 you don't?
Yeah, 25,000 is the cut. If the project's valued or estimated value is 25,000, we have to go out for bids for those, and then we have to take the low bid. Under that, let's see, $5,000 is the limit for notice. You have to notice anything above 5,000 for services, and then I think it's just city policy between that range for getting 2 quotes or 3 quotes, kind of reviewing oranges and apples and that sort of thing, comparing them.
Did we need to consider these individually or just take them all at once?
If the motion includes.
I think we can take them all at once. Okay. If there's no further discussion, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 4, and that's request permission to bid the following contracts in 2015. 2015 LaRip project, Apple Street to 8th Street South to 12th Street South. And second is Chestnut Street, 8th Street South to 16th Street South.
So these 2 projects here are, these types of contracts we would always bring back for permission to bid because they're intermittent. We don't do them every year. It's every 2 or 3 years that we do something like this. But it's there's funding available through the local road improvement program that's administered by Wood County. Something that we've done continually since the program's been in effect. And the eligible costs that can be paid for out of the program, it's state money, but road base, curb and gutter, asphalt, those sorts of things. So
Anybody else have anything? Questions? I'll make a motion to grant a request for permission to bid those contracts.
Second that.
Any further discussion? If none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Item number 5, and that's the request, the dedication of city-owned property for street purposes as Peach Street right-of-way from State Highway 54 to 268 feet west of State Highway 54, and a 4.5-foot strip of land along the west right-of-way of State Highway 54 between Peach Street and Oak Street to be included in the State Highway 54 right-of-way. Now, if everybody followed that, we can have this in front of us, and even that, gotta go back and look over for sure,
Yeah,
so.
the exhibit's definitely a little bit more telling of the areas that we're looking to dedicate. The original CSM, and there's some discrepancy on how best to handle it, but it was originally designated as outlots, these parcels. They did reference for street purposes, although from our understanding, the annexation with Aspirus kind of brought up that the verbiage should actually read dedication rather than just for street purposes, that it actually requires council action to dedicate the property as right-of-way and not be a separate parcel as an outlot would be. So it's just trying to clean up what was, I guess, gone through on the original CSM.
And what, this is just for maintenance of Highway 54 is all it really comes down to?
Yeah, that the entrance into the clinic there, Peach Street, it's actually parceled as a city parcel. It's not dedicated.
It's not actually
as
right away.
right-of-way.
Oh, I gotcha. That makes sense.
So we're still a little unsure if there's some CSMs that come with a certification document that the mayor and the clerk sign at council or after council approval of it. But we'll in the next 2 weeks work through any formalities to get that, whatever documents have to be put together for it.
Okay, this might be really stupid.
No, probably not.
But,
I'm sure of that.
now, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this. This falls within the surveyed boundaries of what could potentially have been a Peach Street thoroughfare through that section of property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that the only reason that it needs to be recognized, that this little stub needs to be recognized as right-of-way? Because it would almost seem to me like, I mean, I guess it's probably more because Aspirus has actually granted that land back to the city than anything else. If they hadn't done that, then realistically, this could have been considered private property, almost like a driveway extension or a driveway.
Yeah, I guess if they didn't grant it back to the city.
It would have been, the maintenance of it would have been their responsibility then. This
Right.
essentially drops the burden of responsibility for maintenance on that stub onto the city instead of onto the adjacent property owner.
Dedicating it, no, but the transfer of ownership, which this had already done.
Right.
The city owns it.
That did that action back in 2009, and now we're actually trying to make it so that it's our burden of responsibility, I guess, or
No, it's just to designate the use for street.
for street purposes.
Street purposes. I know it says for street purposes, but it apparently it's supposed to say dedicated.
So,
That's
Do
right.
we-
There's not the intent to
Right.
run Peach Street through.
No,
I mean, that could be in some people's minds.
right,
And so just to clarify that.
correct.
do we plow that?
Yeah, I wouldn't have to do it.
Like I said, a couple times I've been into the clinic there, and, you know, it just feels like it's a driveway. It doesn't feel like it's dedicated right away, you know, but whatever it is. I get what you're driving at here. I'll make an motion to approve the request of item 5 as presented.
I'll second it.
And a motion and second to approve the request. Any further discussion by anybody? Hearing none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 6, and that's a request for the dedication of city-owned property for street purposes as an addition to the High Street right-of-way between 8th Avenue North and 9th Avenue North. Which, Joe?
Yep, there's also an exhibit for this one. We brought this to the committee back in November. And we went back and asked the property owners that are adjacent to this piece of property, city-owned property, if they were interested in it. The one property owner was interested at zero cost. However, it's one big parcel right now that we would have to have a CSM done to split it, just as any other property owner would have to do. So there was a slight cost if he had to pay for any of it. He would take it at no cost, but if CSM costs were passed on, he wasn't interested. And then the other property owner was not interested at all, even if there was no cost.
The cost is what, $600?
Yeah.
Which, the small section or large section was the individual that was interested in the property?
The small section.
Small section. I guess having made the original motion, my intent was with the verbiage of at no cost, to be literal at no
Might as well
cost.
keep it the way it is.
You know, but yeah, I mean, if it's, I guess to me, if you're gonna end up, you know, if we do this certified survey and we'd eat the cost of that at $600, so that the individual got the small section of land, and then the other section of land would just end up going to city dedicated right away, well, then you're not gaining anything by chunking out a section of land, you know, and then having another weird angle cut off, you know, where, yeah, so.
Chad?
Property 31, they weren't interested in that at all? Only property 30 was?
Correct.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, if it was $600,
It's coming up way ahead.
just have the city pay for it, and if a chunk of land gets back on their, they will be taxed for it in a few years.
Right.
You'll get reimbursed the 600, and
Yeah.
everybody will be happy.
Yeah, and that for lot 31 there, that's what his email back to us was, that he wasn't interested in paying any more
Additional
taxes.
property.
Taxes.
Okay.
Who maintains the property?
That's a good question. I almost think that they probably mow the grass there. I've never heard of Sleepers doing that, but
The individuals that are right there, so.
I think they're rental properties, but
Yeah, that one on the corner is definitely.
At 31.
Yeah, they're happy with it, and they don't have to pay additional taxes.
Right.
So can't blame them not to accept it. You know, pay an extra tax.
The only, I guess the question I got now is, if we take it on as, and I anticipate we just keep it as city right away or whatever, but, I mean, we're not gonna, it's just gonna be a wording change. It's not actually gonna be, go out and stake the thing out and do anything different with it.
no, we shouldn't have to do that.
Right, so, I guess, is there the section that would become city right away, for dedication towards city right away? Do they have anything on those parcels right now? Fence, namely?
Their driveways cross that. They both
Okay.
come up to High Street.
Okay.
Oh, no, I take that back. I know one for sure does. I'm not sure about the other.
So do we have to grant a variance then in order to allow that private drive to go across city property?
No, not on the right of way. I mean, well, I guess if we kept it as a city parcel, I guess, they're have driveway on city-owned property now. If it's driveway on right of way, it's no different than any other driveway in town.
Right. I mean, but if we had to go in and actually do something on that road or whatever, we'd be on the hook. If we tore up their section of driveway, we'd be on the hook for repairing that.
Yeah, I guess in the right of way.
And then if they had a fence or something installed in there right now, put up right now, they'd have to take that down, correct?
Correct.
So it's
There's no sidewalks there either, correct?
No.
Not yet.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what they're looking at, is because if they own the property, they would be responsible should sidewalks be needed in that area, so.
Yeah, this is kind of in light of both the assessor plat that we did north of this property and then also our upcoming.
Are sidewalks being installed there?
I guess we were gonna propose that because it is a school route.
Who would the burden of responsibility fall on then for clearing those two small sections? City?
If it's remained city-owned property, then the city.
Well, sidewalk is in the right of way, and the homeowner has
If it
to,
was dedicated as
Right.
right of way, then the homeowner would.
yeah, but any city property 12 feet back from the curb is right of way. So
Right.
everybody has to maintain shoveling and mowing and everything in the boulevard, so it would be no different.
Would they, yeah, I guess that was kind of the
Yes,
question, would it,
They don't own it. So they don't own it now.
If it
We don't
stays,
own 12 feet in front of my house.
it's from the city center
owns
line
from
out,
the curb to my front door. 12
that
feet
small
towards my
section
front door, I
of, small
don't own.
section of grass and then the sidewalk is city property. You only own from the sidewalk up to that's actually your property.
But if the city mandated sidewalks on this street,
Right.
isn't it, if, right now, they still wouldn't have to pay for the sidewalk, the homeowners, is that correct?
well, it depends on, say there's sidewalk there now, the way the parcels are divvied up, the adjacent parcel property owner would be the city. It wouldn't, so the city would have to clear the sidewalk. If it was part of the right of way, the adjacent property owner would be the two residents, property 30 and 31.
Okay. Sorry for making that more confusing than it needs to be.
No,
Should have never bought on sidewalk.
good
Yeah.
question.
So what was your recommendation? You gonna just make it part of the,
Dedicated, or, yeah, the request was to dedicate it to city-owned property as right of way.
well, in light of one of the owners saying he didn't want it, I would make a motion that we make these two smaller parcels, or whatever you wanna call these two smaller sections, dedicate those towards the High Street right away.
I'd second it.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Item number 7, that's request to remove 27.12 parking by permit. D, the city-owned property parking lot between 4th Avenue North and 6th Avenue North and north of West Jackson Street. That's the big parking lot over there, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. In E, the city-owned parking lot bounded by 2nd Street North, Baker Street, and Market Street, which is the rolling lot, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, Joel.
So these are, just trying to tidy up the ordinance, I guess. The brig lot where the Elks Club currently is now, we haven't had any permits, parking permits taken out there in a long time. And then the other lot, the city just purchased that property adjacent to that, and don't have a use for the permanent parking.
Then it would just become free-for-all parking.
Yeah.
Which it is now.
Essentially.
We're just,
Formalizing it.
yeah.
Not overnight. Not overnight parking.
No, I don't work so.
Any other questions? I'll move that we remove these two permit parking items, D and E under 27.12.
Second.
Anybody else? Hearing none, committee will vote. All those in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Back up to 2, do you want to do the next one?
Sure, we can do it.
Okay. And 2 is to review the draft policy governing the riverbank maintenance.
Actually,
Scott, you have something, I guess, right away.
this was generated by a constituent in my area because the riverbank really wasn't being trimmed and you couldn't see the river. And they're saying, well, that's a fantastic asset to the city and why can't we trim it and so forth. So they showed up at our last meeting and I think, Joe, you generated this.
We did. No, I was, Jim Borski worked with Sue Schill and I think the mayor.
Okay. Well, I looked at it and I made some changes. I'll give you a copy. And what I put in red, Joe, maybe you have to share. I made 6 copies.
Keep one for ourselves.
Yeah. So I'll just go through the changes I made, and what my thought was is that if we look at it today and then postpone it until next month, and then maybe go back to Jim Borski, and I was thinking of the Council on Beautification. They meet this month. It just gives them a input in the process. So what I did is, and correct me if you think grammatically or something isn't correct on this, but I put in just why we're doing it in red up on top, and you can just read those yourself to give a kind of a stage as to why we're trying to have this policy. Okay, then, and then under purpose, what I did is, they said to provide policy guidelines. To me, policy and guidelines are somewhat the same, and I think we were just wanting guidelines. So what I did is cross out policy. So to provide guidelines for maintaining the city-owned property along the Wisconsin River, the guidelines will address vegetation control on the east bank, and it goes on and explains where. And then the next paragraph, and it's the same as what they had in theirs. They left the miles for the riverbank, and I really don't know what that would be, so we would have to fill that in. So it says some are considered park-like, while others are considered, I took out some, and I said green space, so that some would be considered green space. And then it goes on, the maintenance of these properties is the responsibility of the Public Works Department pursuant to the policies and general direction, and I put in Wisconsin Rapids Common Council rather than just Common Council. So that's an addition. Okay, next, the city may cut on publicly owned riverbanks wherever safe to do so. And they mentioned generally the slope of 3 to 1. I didn't know what 3 to 1 was, so I put in parentheses. I'm assuming is 3 feet in length with 1 foot incline. So I put that for clarification. And then or less will be mowed. where slopes are steeper than 3-to-1, vegetation will be allowed to grow. They said naturally. Well, that defeats the purpose, and if it's 4 feet high or what have you. So I put down instead of naturally to the height of 1 foot. And I don't know, 1 foot's too short or not. That's what people, Jim Borski or others would have to have input. But I just thought naturally might be a problem if we're trying to get a view of the river in certain spots. So I would take out naturally and then to the height of 1 foot, with the exception of invasive species and trees that were hazardous due to rotting, decay. So they said rot, I put down rotting, decay, or storm damage. Areas to be left in natural state include adjacent to the state office building, private property from Chase Street overlooked to approximately the Mead Pump House, and on the east side from the Mead Street to approximately 300 feet north. That's what they had. And then on the bottom, I like to take out the first part that's underlined and take it out. It says, while it may not be necessary to remove vegetation on an annual basis, efforts will be made. Well, that's the problem we're having now, because it's not being made. And so it defeats the purpose of a guidelines. If you say, then it's a judgment call. So I like to take that out and just say, to ensure acceptable visibility of the river, a combination of mowing and brush cutting. They had an herbicide application. I took that out because that's what Jim's going to have to decide if there's some growth there that has to be done. But I think it muddies the water, and that's a decision that Public Works will have to decide later. So I'd like to take that out. And then will be used to provide for open views of the waterway. The mowing and brush cutting, basically that's what I'm looking at, should take place, I said on or before June 30th. And then honor before, a second time, honor before August 31st annually. The reason I said that, I think June 30th, you get the new growth, and you say honor before, it gives them a window of time. I didn't want to say earlier than that, and it gives them a window of time of cutting it based on Jim Borski's schedules and things like that. And then you get your second growth, and then that would be August 31st, might be a second time. Now, I don't know about those dates, Jim would have to give input, or we may have to discuss that. But, so I'm going to read the last statement again just to get clear, because there was some changes. To ensure the acceptable visibility of the river, a combination of mowing and brush cutting will be used to provide for open views of the waterway. The mowing and brush cutting should take place on or before June 30th and on or before August 31st annually. And then, like I say, if after our discussion, I would suggest we go to the Council on Beautification and give them a chance to have input, because this topic came up. I'm on that council. It came up then.
This topic actually came up 2 years ago on Park and Rec, because there was
Okay.
disturbance with the island and between the old Elks Club
Okay.
and the island. And because it was maintained all the way up until about 80 feet from the island, and then people up on that had properties adjacent to the
Couldn't see.
riverbank couldn't see.
Yeah.
And so nothing really came about. After a year went by, we finally forced the park department to
Good.
do a little bit of trimming.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of excuses, a lot of people brushed it under the, brushed this issue under the rug. And I'm not blaming any department, whether it was streets or engineering, but there was a lot of talk on that riverbank that nothing could be done, because if they removed anything that was 2 foot diameter or smaller, whatever have you, they were worried about the mustard seed weed and all kinds of different weeds and thorn bushes. That riverbank is deteriorating, so the more stumps they pulled out, the more as rain would come down the
Sure.
street, that up on the hill, it would wash out the riverbank, and they made this whole big thing about the riverbank washing away, and they kept talking about millions and thousands of dollars to put up a retaining wall
Yeah.
or what have you, and nobody followed through with it.
Yeah.
They were gonna get, the DNR, LASPA talked about getting, other riverbank specialists involved to figure out what they could do and different options, to clear more of that brush out. So that's why so many feet from the island is natural and you can't see through it. They claim this because of the erosion of the riverbank. So this goes back,
I didn't know the
Further,
history of it.
but
yeah.
anyway, I'm glad that this is finally coming to this committee and going on to some sort of policy for the council to vote on, because now it will be taken care of and the city crews will be forced to do something on an annual basis.
Right.
And I don't know, I like everything you've done. I just don't know about the last sentence about the time frames there.
I don't
To me, most of your pruning and stuff should be done in the spring. Knock it down, that way you have the summer to enjoy it, and any growth throughout the summer, they can do some more pruning in the fall. But that's up to,
So maybe saying nay. See, I thought the courtesy of talking to Jim Borski and then going to the beautification council
sure.
and then coming back here and this group looking at it once more before it goes to the common council next month. But at least they'll go through a number of eyes and inputs, and so that when we go, it should look pretty decent, but at least you have guidelines,
Yes.
like you said.
So at least you have the same visual scape.
Yeah.
All the way along the river.
Yeah.
Wherever you can see. I would like to request, me personally, the engineering to look more in on the erosion and what, for future. Not that I didn't believe anybody, but I mean, it was just very quickly looked at and then it was swept under the rug, and this is the first time it's been brought up now for about a year, so.
And on that topic, we do have, there was Park and Rec approval of proposed bike route recreational plan through the city. And the one thought with the erosion issue there, although it's relatively slow, it's not like it's, the whole bank is gonna just give way all of a sudden or anything like that, but the plan was to extend that recreational path south of the Elks Club building through the park, and then along Mead Street, down 3rd Street. There's a few properties there that we get down into Demons Park, and then look at how we can get across the expressway. And so there's a DNR stewardship grant that might offer some funding potential for that, that we might try to pursue in 2015, at least make an application for, but and see where it goes.
I like your idea of submitting it to the beautification committee too, to get a little insight, because we do have Sue Winch, who
Yeah.
is a McKay tree
Input.
specialist, and, she's up on pruning and arborist and
Right.
taking care of
This is just cursory what I took from here. But yeah, she's involved, and let them, I mean, one minute we talk about engaging the community, and then, here's a great project for them to get input on.
Who are you talking about taking it to the council?
There's a
I mean,
there's-
you're on it, but
Yeah, there's a
somebody
number,
should be there to explain it, I guess, what's here. Not just say, here, look at it,
no, I
I
would,
mean, somebody should be there to,
I would explain
I
it
don't
to
know if you
them.
meant
They're gonna
the
meet,
committee or what,
No.
should be there.
I'd be happy to explain it to them.
I'm on it too. don't
And
worry.
they meet
So-
this month, I think, they're scheduling it. And so if I had your permission, and I don't know how you do this now, but if you agree to the changes I made, I would do this in naturally black and white, and then submit that to the committee and talk to Jim Borski about it. And then come back to this committee after they give input and Jim Borski gives input, and we could revisit this next month. So,
like I said, the only changes I would say was say early spring and late fall is what I would change it to and not give a specific date
That would at least give you a
Until-
chance,
until we talk to.
well, that would give you a chance, if you worded it more along those lines, that would give you a chance to catch if you had a late break in winter. You know, so that would give you a little bit of flexibility there, but
Some springs are super wet, you can't get
You
down.
can't
there.
get in.
Yeah.
You can't Get in there and do it, so it has to be with Mother Nature too. so.
Right.
Well, I think we can submit it, maybe leave the dates off, but that the intent is to put dates in.
leave a space for dates.
Yeah,
I put,
and
I'll
as
put
it,
down,
as it goes through the process, or if you wanna put something, but
I could put
it can be changed,
parentheses,
obviously.
I could put parentheses early spring and then put another dash date.
Yeah.
And then they can decide.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, maybe
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
on purpose here, but just in general terms. Some of the things here, I like the taking out of herbicide application. That's not playing devil's advocate. You know, if this is going to be right on the riverfront, I don't think we should be applying harsh chemicals directly to what's essentially going to wash right into the river. So
Right.
I think we need to be very cognizant and aware of that. I like your removal of that first line in there, that may not be necessary to remove vegetation on an annual basis. You know, even as they go through there, that's still gonna occur. So I mean, it's gonna be kind of in the background. It's not gonna be stated, but it's gonna be in the background, you know, okay, so we're going down here and okay, this needs to be trimmed back, but that doesn't. So we're not gonna do, so that is kind of a little bit superfluous. So yeah, it's good to take that out of there. I think if you wanted to actually have some bite behind it, that this needs to actually take place, I think you remove anywhere where it says guidelines, you can just make it a policy. Because otherwise, it's just, you know, guidelines are, the old adage, guidelines, rules are meant to be broken, well, guidelines are meant to, whatever, you know? So I think if you make it if you say it's a policy, it's got a lot more authority to it behind it.
Okay.
A couple of the sticking points that I have, anywhere where the slope is greater than 3 to 1. To me, growing naturally would probably be better, and this would come right back to the erosion issue. Because if you've got a gradual slope, you're not gonna have as bad erosion as if you've got a lot greater slope, a steeper slope. So I think to allow that growth to occur naturally is probably better for the overall health of the riverbank, for the river in general, and for potentially safety of citizens and people enjoying the park. Not to mention for our employees going down there to do the trimming. Because you get into some of these steeper locations, and if you say, well, you know, a 2 to 1 or a 1.75 to 1 slope, well, you need to trim that to 1 foot. Well, now suddenly you almost have to go down there with a hoist to get them to hack at the sides of the thing, you know. So I think to allow those sections to grow naturally is safer, maybe not as visually appealing, but I think it's actually better for the overall health
Yeah.
of all involved. And you know, I mean, I get where you're coming from on the whole thing. The one thing I might just kind of bring up as kind of a side note on it. How long ago was it that we did the goose population control measures? Was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was.
At 43,000.
Yeah. Right. And so one of the things that I recall from that very strictly was when they talked about some of these different control measures that you can implement. One of the first things that they pointed to from EW Extension was that geese and other waterfowl will not go through an area to get to water that is upgrown, right? So you end up with a lot of feces on the riverbanks where we mow because it presents an avenue for them to easily get into the river, to easily get away from danger, you know, a perceived danger of a child or a car or whatever it is, and get into the river. So the only thing I might caution here is that if we would continue to take away more natural settings, you could potentially see, and I think we've already seen some of the goose population come back in town. If I were to, throw a wager out there, I think some of that has come back, not as bad as it was a couple years back, but I think if you go too far with it, that you're gonna end up with that same problem a lot sooner than you otherwise would. So I think if we get really, I don't wanna say overly zealous, but if we start, trimming back in places that otherwise would have been allowed to grow naturally, that's gonna just encourage those geese to nest in there, especially if it's a place not necessarily in a park proper, right there south of, what's it, Elks Lodge? Or what is?
That's where they
Yes.
congregate.
That's where they congregate the most, but now if you go further down the bank or further up the bank, whatever the case may be, and you start removing some of that undergrowth that was prohibiting them from going up into some of these other properties or some of these other locations, now they're gonna feel emboldened to go in there because now it's safer for them to go in there. And now these are places where now we've gotta go back in and do another goose control measure. And now we've got more places we need to look at the next time we would do that as far as population control. So I think in that respect, going too far on that causes us headaches in another area as well. But I don't disagree we should be clearing it for aesthetic appeal, but I think we need to be very careful about managing, allowing it to be natural. in
I think
certain
you
areas.
need a combination.
Yeah.
If I kept naturally, and then as they do, hopefully it's done, something's done.
All right.
And then it can be reviewed and discussed, but at least you have some guidelines, and
Right.
then you can go from there. Going back to this is off that subject, but talking about the geese, it just seems to me like we did that a few years ago,
Mhm.
but it becomes an event. I don't know, in my opinion, why we don't do it more annually, or every other year, because then, again, it becomes an event. And it just seems that just isn't healthy for people walking along that area, kids playing in that area, and that we should do it on a regular basis. That's off this subject, and I just wanted to comment. But I kept thinking, because I get calls from people along the river because of the geese, and the thing is, I just don't understand why we don't do it on a regular basis. Then it doesn't become as big a deal.
Well, we have a tendency to do something, forget that we did it, a few years later. And maybe we should bring that back and revisit that again at some point in the future and
At
make
least every
that,
other year or something.
yeah, make it a biannual review or something along those lines. But,
So I'll go naturally, and then I'll make the changes that you talked about. I'll do it in black and white. And I would like to suggest we go to the beautification committee, and then I'll be happy to share this. And if, Chad, if you're there, and then next month, come back with the revised and get your input.
change one other word too. Where you say 1 foot incline, make incline height. Because what you're looking for rise over run is what you're really looking for. That's very academic, but.
That's good.
So are people, is that meeting noticed that it's taking place that neighbors can attend?
I don't think-
I'm not saying, that it's a public meeting necessarily, but,
I don't think they publicize,
yeah,
so I don't know how to, or I could talk to.
Well, you're just gonna get ideas and refer them,
Right,
they'll come back to this committee, so if
Could
it's
be
on your
huge.
agenda, then to approve it. If the
Yeah.
people wanna
Oh, yeah,
speak up in
yeah.
the neighborhood, they can come to this meeting.
okay. I don't have a problem myself with the route you're suggesting it to go.
And then Jim has his input, so it's kind of a process, but what's the hurry? We don't have to worry about this until spring, we might as well do
Do
it
you
right
want
now.
us to approve language for you to take to the?
I'd like to have you approve the changes that we
Yeah.
made, and then I'll take that to the beautification council. And the changes I'm making so far, I'm changing it from guidelines to policy. And then the changes I made, like I took some out in the second paragraph. I'm putting height at the end of incline. I'm removing to one height of 1 foot, to the height of 1 foot. I'm taking the first line I underlined in the last paragraph out, the first part. And I'm taking herbicide application out. And I'm taking the dates out and say early spring and late fall.
I might make one other, just what I scribbled right here. Say, in your second whereas, say and whereas.
Okay,
Really stupid. And then say the following policy is implemented by the city of Wisconsin Rapids.
Okay.
That way it kind of, you're doing a whereas statement up here, so then you should follow it up right away with what it is that the intent is gonna be of the body of the verbiage that follows, so.
I'll put that.
Where you took out herbicides application, I would maybe suggest mowing, brush cutting, and other methods, rather than if you don't like the herbicide being used, but I would assume that Mr. Borski knows what
Has to be
herbicides can be used near the waterways, and there are some that would not be detrimental to fish or whatever. So if you put in other means rather than, mowing, brush cutting, and other means or any other means, that, throw that out there.
Opens it up for him to,
Say, yeah, because like I say, there might be different materials that can be used that would not necessarily affect the fish population or whatever.
Round up the whole bank.
Sorry,
Let's burn it.
sorry, Timmy, it's gonna be brown for the 4th of July.
Well, there's burning, there are.
No, that's natural.
Controlled burn.
Yeah.
That's right, it's all burning.
Every 4th of July. Put your blanket down.
Sure.
and Chad and I can explain it.
I'll move that, riverbank vegetation maintenance, proposal as revised, this evening, be taken to the council on beautification for their viewing, and their thoughts on it. And then, come back to this committee and then to the council.
Make sure, we gotta make sure it gets on the agenda.
Yeah.
This month, because I would like to see this policy in place so they can start already this spring.
Yeah. I
Otherwise,
agree.
we'll wait around and it'll be 2016.
See, that was the challenge in the first place. It just seems that nobody had the answer. It was always postponed. So this will tighten it up.
Very good, thank you.
There's a second, or was there? I missed it.
Gonna leave it for you if you want.
Okay, I'll second.
Any further discussion, committee, on the motion? Okay, committee, will vote, all in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Now we go back down and review the proposed 2015 Public Works project schedule.
We went over it last couple meetings. I guess I can go over it again, otherwise if there's any questions on, I don't think anything's really changed from the last,
Okay, if
last
there was
meeting.
anything
So,
late
no,
breaking or something to let us know what.
nothing earth shattering.
I ask this every single year, but the chip sealing section, if that can be made public, either, on the city website, I don't know if we really wanna take out ad space to advertise what sections we'd be chip sealing, but, city website and then through social media means to make that information readily available as to what areas are going to be chip sealed, because certain people are gonna be more interested in that than others. It's a little self-serving, because I am, but.
So they're not shocked when it happens.
Our schedule is
I
on
have
the
two paid
website.
jobs, so,
Okay, yeah.
and I know other people would be in the same situation, so.
Any other comments on anything, anybody? Okay. And then we'll go on to item 9, and that's to review the referral list. Well, 17, and that's the riverbank, that'll be coming back to this committee.
Yeah.
Should we leave that on there?
I think so.
Yeah, okay, I do too.
18 we take off.
18, I think that's a dedication there on Peach Street, right away on 54. Yeah, 19, and that's dedicate city-owned property at 9th Avenue, between, on High Street, between 8th Avenue and 9th Avenue. That one, Ken. And 21. And that's the 2 parking permit spots that we eliminated from the ordinance.
I'd like to make a referral back to the committee if I could at this time.
Yep.
I'd like to see a biannual review of a goose or waterfowl population control policy brought forward to the committee. I don't know if it has to go so far as having UW Extension assistance on that. I think we had a lot of really good information the last time they were here. But if anything else has come to light, I'm happy to see a presentation from them again, and that might be a nice kind of a refresher for everyone as to what, how, and why.
Approach it like this, just
Yeah.
take a couple months.
But I think a biannual review would be a good thing every 2 year, every other year, take a look at it, just see where things are at.
You got that guys down there?
Yep.
Nick and Joe? With that, then we're coming to the last item. I guess just before that, I'd like to thank Everett City Community Access for televising this and taping it to be shown at some later dates. I appreciate the newspaper being here to take their notes and whatever they're going to print in that. So with that, I'll go to item 10, and that's to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor respond by aye.
Bye.
Opposed. Ayes have it. The meeting's adjourned at 7:06 PM. Thank you.
Get rid of the pieces before.